Hello and welcome to the class. So today we are going to study the topic Indian National Movement. And this is a part of foundation course and it comes under the section Indian Polity. So the learning objectives for today's class will be to make aware students about the various events that took place during Indian national struggle, to classify and identify the events in three main phases of Indian national movement so that they can learn the events when they occurred in easy way. And also the main aim is to foster the feeling of nationalism among the students and also to recognize the contributions and sacrifices made by the great personalities during the national movement. So basically, we are going to cover the important main events which were most influencing the national movement. So first of all, it has been observed that national movement was the struggle for freedom. And in India, there has been many reasons for the rise of nationalism, whether they were political reasons, socio-religious reasons, economic factors, various reasons were there. The first one was the sense of being oppressed under colonial rule. The people were feeling exploited and they wanted freedom from that. So the British policy of conquest and expansion was not in the benefit of Indians. So they wanted to free themselves from it. There were various revolts by peasants and tribals that were taking place because when their lands and their right to livelihood was taken away, there was no way for that for them. So they revolted against the Britishers regarding the various policies, the tax policies, the extraction of tax, whether there are any environmental calamities. They were not spared for even for that. So there was racial discrimination. There were various social and religious reform movements that took place in 19th century, and actually they revived the glory of ancient India. The movements created faith among the people in their religion, in their culture, and thus gave them the message of love and pride, take pride and do sacrifice for their motherland. There was also the intellectual and spiritual side of nationalism that was voiced by various persons like Bankim Chandra Chatterjee, who wrote the book Anand Bhatt based on nationalism. And from there, a famous slogan for the motherland, Vande Matram, became the cry of patriotic nationalist. Then there were some other spiritual gurus like Swami Dayanand Saraswati or Aurobindo Ghosh. So they tried to bring out the spiritual side of nationalism. So as we have discussed that history of Indian national movement was divided in three phases. So what were the three phases? The first one was the moderate phase that started from 1885 to 1905. Then there came the extremist phase that started from 1905 to 1918. And the third phase was the Gandhian era when the Gandhiji emerged at the platform of Indian national movement. It started from 1919 to 1947 until India got freedom. So at this time, some regional organizations were formed which tried to raise their voices against the British rule. However, these regional organizations were not working jointly. So it was felt that if there is a unified kind of organization which represent all in main people in an organization, so it would help the Indian masses to raise their voices against the British rule. So for that, this led to the formation of Indian National Congress in the year 1885. So on 28th December 1885, Indian National Congress was emerged. It was founded by A.O. Hume in 1885, And Alan Octavian Hume was actually a retired civil service officer. He gave safe and constitutional way to avoid popular agitation against British rule. He was supported in this scheme by the Viceroy Lord Dufferin. And INC was founded at Gokuldas Tejpal Sanskrit College in Bombay, and there were originally 72 delegates in it. So W.C. Banerjee of Calcutta was elected as the first president, and A.O. Hume was the general secretary of INC. So the Indian National Congress actually represented an urge of the politically conscious Indians to set up a national organization to work for their betterment. Its leaders had complete faith in the British government and their sense of justice. So the most prominent leaders who had this kind of attitude for the Indian National Congress were Firoz Shah Mehta, Gopal Krishna Gokhale, Dada Bhai Nauroji, Ras Bihari Bose, Badruddin Tayyabji, and many. So from 1885 to 1905, the Indian National Congress influence was confined to the urban educated Indians. So this is the reason this phase of Indian national movement is known as moderate phase. So mainly the real aim of Congress was to train the Indian youth in political agitation and to organize or to create public opinion in the country. So mainly they were shown the path. For this, they used the method of an annual session where they discuss the problems and pass the resolutions. So the methods of struggle for the moderate phase during under the Indian National Congress, the first set of methods we are going to discuss first. These were holding of meetings, giving speeches, passing resolutions for their demands. They also made use of press to criticize government policies. They sent memos and petitions to government. So these were the first set of methods which they tried at the starting. Then there were the second set of methods. These were the 3 Ps: petitions, prayers, protest. And also they published weekly journal India to present India's case before the British public also. Indian leaders traveled to Britain to make British politicians and people to make them aware what kind of problems are faced by dependent India. Dadabhai Nauroji is also known as the Grand Old Man of India. He was the main leader in during the moderate phase. He published books and spread awareness that British rule was an obstacle in India's progress. He wrote a very famous book of poverty and un-British rule in India. And he gave the drain theory that what the Britishers were doing in India. They were taking the raw material from India, prepared the material in their country, and after that they brought the finished goods in India again to sell that. So the economy of India was diminishing, and the golden bird India was drained by Britishers. Then there was another leader, famous leader, Gopal Krishna Gokhale, who is also known as the political guru or the mentor of Gandhiji. He founded Servants of India Society in 1905, and its main aim was to train national leaders to serve the nation. The next important event which occurred in 1905 was the partition of Bengal. So Lord Curzon announced the partition of Bengal, and the reason he gave for partition was to improve administration, because at that time earlier the Britishers were only the traders, but later they occupied the position of administrators, and in the starting they tried to occupy the Bengal area, and to improve administration Lord Curzon tried to made partition in Bengal. But the real aim was the famous divide and rule. They wanted to divide and then they rule. So the partition was done in order to create a separate state for Muslims, and so wanted to introduce the poison of communalism in the country, which is still a major problem in our democratic country. People of different parts of India opposed the partition of Bengal all over the country. The people of India were not in the support of the partition, and this made the British reverse the partition of Bengal and unite it in 1911. So the Bengal, which was partitioned in 1905, Britishers were forced to reunite Bengal in 1911 because of the agitation by Indian people. So after that, we can see that the next phase, the extremist phase of Indian national movement started after the partition of Bengal. And in 1906, we can see Muslim League was found, which we are going to discuss in the later part of this lesson. So first of all, we will look at the Surat split, which took place in 1907. Earlier than that, there were various sessions which were held in Congress. So in 1905, the Congress session was held in Banaras, which was presided over by Gopal Krishna Gokhale. Then in 1906, Congress session was held in Calcutta, which was presided over by Dadabhai Nauroji. And then in 1907, the Congress session took place in 1907 at Surat. And Surat is a city which is located on the river, on the bank of the river Tapti. And it was presided by Firoz Shah Mehta. So there were the differences which occurred now. And the two main objectives were placed by the extremists at this time. That was the demand for the resolution of Swaraj, the self-rule. And they wanted that Lala Lajpat Rai was to be made the president of Indian National Congress. So the moderates were not accepting these demands, and the moderates supported the idea of Ras Bihari Ghosh as the president. They did not supported Lala Lajpat Rai to be the president of Indian National Congress. And so the extremists were expelled from the INC. So moderates and the extremists, they split in this session. And this is how it can be said that this was the victory of the British policy of divide and rule. Lal, Bal, Pal, as they are famously known as, these three leaders were the main extremist leaders at this time. So actually, the mild policies of the moderates led to the rise of passionate, radical nationalist or Garam Dal, who were known as the extremists. And these important leaders, Lal Bal Pal, were Lala Lajpat Roy, Bal Gangadhar Tilak, and Bipin Chandra Pal. So mainly moderates, the three Ps which they were following, they failed to define India's political goals. So methods adopted by them were mild and ineffective. And also the extremists believed that the methods were only confined to the upper landed class, and it failed to enlist the mass support. So this was the reason the Britishers were not at all affected by their demands. And the extremists or the Garam Dal realized that the British were out to exploit Indians. They only wanted to drain Indians of their economy or their money, destroy their self-sufficiency, and drain India of its wealth. So now the extremists believe that the methods of prayers and petitions should be removed, and the protest methods should now be used. Like they believed in organizing mass protest. They criticized government policies. They requested Indian people to boycott foreign goods and made use of Swadeshi, which is the homemade goods. So they believe that Indians should become free of foreign rule and govern themselves. That's why they said that Swaraj is the best rule, self-rule is the best rule. So Bal Gangadhar Tilak at this time gave a slogan and said, "Freedom is our birthright and we must have it." In 1916, the groups which split in 1907 at Surat were again united with the efforts of Mrs. Annie Besant. So Annie Besant actually started the Home Rule movement in 1916, and its headquarters was at Pune, and they also demanded Swaraj. And Home Rule movement was supported by Tilak, Bal Gangadhar Tilak also. Then in 1906, as we earlier discussed, Muslim League was formed. Now, this was again a move of divide and rule played by Britishers. British motivated Muslims to form a permanent political association of their own. They said that this religion, this community has not been given proper representation. So you need to form a permanent political association of your own. So on 30th December 1906, the All India Muslim League was founded by Nawab Salim Ullah Khan in Dhaka, or which is situated in Bangladesh. Aga Khan was chosen as its president. So the main objective of the league was to protect and advance the rights of Muslims in India and represent their needs to the government. So the formation of the Muslim League is considered to be the first fruit of the British master strategy of divide and rule. Muhammad Ali Jinnah, we all know that was the face of Muslim League, later joined the league. This was the All India Muslim League, originally known as All India Muslim League, which was formed in 1906. Then now we will discuss the role of revolutionaries at this time. The policies of the British developed deep hatred among younger generation of India. So they felt that there should be an organized revolutionary movement at this time. Secret groups, secret societies was launched and organized for carrying out the revolutionary activities against the Britishers. They attempted killing of unpopular British officials who were doing atrocities on the Indian people. They or revolutionaries committed dacoities to finance their activities and looted arms from the Britishers. The centers of their activities were places like Punjab, Maharashtra, Bengal, Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, and Odisha. And prominent revolutionaries, which we have heard so many times, were Khudiram Bose, Prafulla Chaki, Bhupendra Nath Dutt, V.D. Savarkar, Sardar Ajit Singh, Lala Hardayal, who founded the Gadar Party, Sardar Bhagat Singh, Rajguru, Sukhdev, Chandrasekhar Azad, etc. So we all have heard the brave activities carried out by Bhagat Singh, Rajguru, Sukhdev. So the important events which took place during this era by the revolutionaries was, first of all, was the Kakuri conspiracy, which took place in 1925. And it was done by Ram Prasad Bismil, Ashfaqullah Khan, and others. They looted a train in Kakuri, which is a place in UP. In 1928, a Hindustan Socialist Republican Association was formed by Chandrasekhar Azad, Bhagat Singh, Batukeshwar Dutt, and others. Bhagat Singh and Batukeshwar Dutt threw a bomb inside the Central Legislative Assembly on 8th April 1929. They wanted to protest the passage of the Public Safety Bill and the Trade Disputes Bill, which has been passed by the Britishers. And they also raised the famous slogan of Inqilab Zindabad, long live the revolution. Following which, trials were held in court, they were arrested, and various cases were imposed on these revolutionaries. And at the end, Bhagat Singh, Sukhdev, and Rajguru were hanged in 1931. They were regarded martyrs and became the symbol of national unity and aspiration. So, this is how the Indian citizens gained inspiration from such revolutionaries. Later on, we will discuss now about the Khilafat movement. So, in the First World War, which started in 1914, Britain and its allied groups won the war. During the war, Muslims supported the government with an understanding that the sacred places of Ottoman Empire would be in the hands of Khalifa. Ottoman Empire is the present Turkey. But after the war, a new treaty was imposed on the Turkish Sultan as Turkey was defeated in First World War, and the Ottoman Empire, which was a very large empire, was divided. This angered the Muslims, who took it as an insult to the Khalifa. Two brothers, Shaukat Ali and Muhammad Ali, started the Khilafat movement against the British government. Then there were later on various kinds of activities and events happened. This was the Rowlatt Act. The act authorized the British government to arrest and imprison any person without trial in a court of law. And it also banned Indians from keeping any type of weapon. This angered the Sikhs, the community who kept a kripan, a type of small sword, with them as part of their religion. So on 13th April 1919, on the occasion of Baisakhi fair at Jallianwala Bagh, a place in Amritsar, people had gathered for peaceful protest against the Rowlatt Act. But the British officer General Dyer ordered for open fire on the crowd with their machine guns, and this act was taken out without giving any warning to the people. The Jallianwala Bagh gates were closed, and the people, men, women, and children, could not escape to safety. Within a few minutes, about 1,000 persons were killed. The famous philosopher poet who was given the knighthood by the British government returned his knighthood at the very moment. So we will here discuss the Rowlatt Act in detail. This act was implemented in 1919. And the act extended wartime measures from the Defense of India Act, including juryless trials, indefinite detention without charge, and strict control of the press. So the Britishers wanted to control everything at this time. Many nationalists found this completely unacceptable, and Gandhi decided to organize another satyagraha, this time on a nationwide scale. On 6th April, they held a hartal, or the day of mourning, where people stopped work and went to meetings. Gandhi then planned to openly sell prohibited books. In some regions like the Punjab, some protests descended into violence, like in Jallianwala Bagh. And the government repression was brutal, most infamously in Amritsar, where at least 379 people were killed. Now, the next third phase of Indian national movement we are going to discuss, which started with the emergence of Gandhiji. Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi was a lawyer, and he was trained in Britain. He went to South Africa in 1893, and he resided there for almost 21 years. He observed the treatment of Indians in South Africa by the British to be unjust, and this provoked his conscience. He decided to fight against the policy of racial discrimination of the South African government, as he was once thrown out of the train on the basis of this racial discrimination, which opened his eyes. And during the course of his struggle against the government, he evolved the technique of satyagraha, which is the non-violent insistence for truth and justice. He returned to India in 1915. When he returned to India later on in 1916, he founded the Sabarmati Ashram at Ahmedabad to practice the ideas of truth and non-violence. Gopal Krishna Gokhale, who is also known as the political guru or the mentor of Gandhiji, advised him to tour the country and mainly go to villages to understand the people and their problems. So his first experiment in satyagraha in India began at Champaran in Bihar in 1917. It was the revolution by peasants, which was against the oppressive plantation system, which was forced by the Britishers to be done by the peasants. Then next satyagraha by peasants of the Kheda district of Gujarat took place. They were not able to pay revenue because of the crop failure and epidemics faced at that time. And at this time, Gandhiji supported the peasants and carried out satyagraha. And Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, along with him, supported in this satyagraha. In Ahmedabad, he organized a movement amongst cotton mill workers who were again opposing the British depressive British policies. So the most famous movement was carried out by Gandhiji from 1920 to 22, and Gandhiji started his non-cooperation movement in which he appealed to the people not to cooperate with the British government. At this time, the Khilafat movement started by the Muslims, and the non-cooperation movement led by Gandhi merged into one common confrontation against the British government. As we have discussed this earlier, that during the First World War, Turkey was defeated by the Allied who were the winners. Britishers were the winners at that time, and the Indian Muslims took it as an offense, and Khilafat movement was an attempt by the Indian Muslim community to unite together in support of the Turkish Empire, which was ruled by the Khalifa. So, and it was attacked by the European powers. So, for the non-cooperation movement, Gandhiji laid down an elaborate program. He asked to surrender the titles and honorary offices. He asked the officials to refuse to attend the functions, gradual boycott of British courts by the lawyers and the litigants, refusal on the part of the military, clerical, and laboring classes to offer themselves as recruits for service in Mesopotamia on behalf of Britishers, boycott of the elections to the Legislative Council by candidates and the voters, boycott of the foreign goods and the schools and colleges. So what was the effect of non-cooperation movement on the economic front? Foreign goods were boycotted, liquor shops were picketed and closed, foreign clothes were burnt in huge bonfires. The import of foreign cloth halved between 1921 and 1922. So in value, the drop was from 102 crore to 57 crore. In many places, merchants and traders refused to trade in foreign goods or finance foreign trade. The people began discarding imported clothes and wore only Indian ones. And the production of Indian textile mills and handlooms went up tremendously. So these were all the effects of non-cooperation movement. But the non-violent non-cooperation movement, which started auspiciously, was marked by violence in August 1921. And the government started taking serious action. Prominent leaders were arrested. At a place called Chauri Chaura in Uttar Pradesh, violent action took place, and the mob set fire to a police station, burning many policemen at that time. So Gandhiji was also disturbed by this act, and in 2 months, the British government imprisoned nearly 30,000 people. So the mob violence and in Gorakhpur district of UP led to the withdrawal of the non-cooperation movement. So Gandhi suspended his non-cooperation movement on February 14, 1922. Then another famous movement by Gandhiji was the civil disobedience movement. And the causes of civil disobedience movement was, first of all, was the Simon Commission, which was sent by the Britishers, And in 1927, British government appointed a commission under the chairmanship of Sir John Simon for constitutional reforms. The commission had no Indian member in it. The Indians boycotted this all-white commission. Black flags were shown. Demonstrations, hartals took place all over the country. And there was the cry of Simon, go back. These demonstrators were lathi charged by the British government at number of places by British police. Lala Lajpat Rai, the extremist leader, was severely assaulted by the police and later he died of his injuries. Then the another cause of civil disobedience movement was the demand for dominion status. The Calcutta session of Indian National Congress of December 1928, a demand for dominion status, that is the Swaraj, was raised. A period of 1 year was given to the British Indian government to accept the demands of the Congress. Civil disobedience movement under the leadership of Mahatma Gandhi would be launched to realize this objective. So this resolution was passed in Indian National Congress meeting. The government imposed taxes on the use of salt, and this was opposed by the people. This is one of the another reason of civil disobedience movement. And so Gandhiji led the Dandi March, which commenced on 12th March 1930 from Sabarmati Ashram in Ahmedabad, Gujarat, towards the coastal village of Dandi, which is about 390 kilometers in distance from Ahmedabad. Gandhiji, along with 78 followers, set out on foot towards Dandi. They covered the distance between Sabarmati Ashram and Dandi in 25 days and reached the coast of Dandi on 6th April 1930, where they picked up a handful of salt, and thus Gandhi broke the salt laws and launched the mass civil disobedience movement. The government arrested him in May 1930 and put him in Yerwada jail at Pune. Gandhi-Irwin Pact was then signed in 1931, in which various demands were fulfilled for Gandhiji. Actually, Gandhiji wanted that whoever has been arrested during this whole period in civil disobedience movement, they all should be released. And there were some other demands by Gandhiji. Gandhiji also went to London in 1931 and participated in the second round table conference as the sole representative of the Congress. But still no settlement could have been arrived at. The movement continued to linger in a non-effective manner till early April 1934, when Mahatma Gandhi announced his decision to withdraw the civil disobedience movement. With these developments, the second phase of civil disobedience movement came to an end. Then the next important movement which was launched by Gandhiji was in 1942, and this was named as Quit India Movement. British, after that, Quit India movement, in this Gandhiji gave the slogan of do or die, karo ya maro. And it was given to force British to leave India. There were, at this time, there were various acts of sabotage, and the government held Gandhiji responsible for this. And for these acts of violence, Gandhiji was made responsible. So all the prominent leaders and Gandhiji were arrested, and Congress was banned to function. Meanwhile, if we talk about Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, he ran away from British detention from Calcutta and reached foreign land. And there he organized the Indian National Army, INA, or the Azad Hind Fauj, to overthrow the British from India. And at this time, Second World War broke out, and in September 1939, and India was declared an ally without its consent in 1939. So this agitated the Indian leaders, and after this, the Britishers understood that they need to work on this, and British began to negotiate the transfer of power in 1945, Before that, in 1940, August offer was announced by Lord Linlithgow, Viceroy, to get the support of Indians in the Second World War. And Cripps mission was a failure, and thus the Quit India movement was successful in pressurizing the Britishers. The Muslim League asked for a separate Muslim state on August 16, 1946, which has been observed as the Direct Action Day. Communal rights took place in the country. So, as a result, Lord Louis Mountbatten, he was the last British viceroy, he announced the division of the empire into two parts, namely India and Pakistan. So this is how, in three phases, which we have seen the whole Indian national movement. Before the India achieved independence in 1947, there was a cabinet mission also introduced, mission plan introduced in 1946, so that by at that time, the British Prime Minister was Clement Attlee, and he wanted to set up an interim government in India so that decisions could be taken. So it was set up under Jawaharlal Nehru at that time, and Lord Mountbatten was sent to India with an aim to find a way to transfer power to India. So on 3rd June, Independence of India Act 1947 was passed by British Parliament, and this is how India got independence on 15th August 1947. So I hope that you all have understood the various events which took place during the Indian national movement. And these are few of the references which are given in various forms on YouTube, NCERT, and various other resources where you can go through in detail about these movements and how these events took place. Now, at the end, we will go through the evaluation questions. So question number 1 is, which Indian mass movement began with the famous Dandi March of Mahatma Gandhi? This we have discussed recently. And the options are Khilafat movement, non-cooperation movement, civil disobedience movement, or Quit India movement. So out of these, three movements were led by Gandhiji, which are very famous. And after Dandi March was launched on 12th March 1930, civil disobedience movement was launched by Mahatma Gandhi. Question number 2 is, who is the famous person who returned the knighthood to protest against the atrocities of the Jallianwala Bagh massacre? So after Rowlatt Act, which was passed in 1919, the people of Punjab collected for a peaceful demonstration against the act in Jallianwala Bagh in Amritsar. So after this, many Indian leaders were very hurt, and we can see the options here: Aurobindo Ghosh, Rabindranath Tagore, Jawaharlal Nehru, Bipin Chandra Pal. And out of this, Rabindranath Tagore was given the knighthood by British government as he won the Nobel Prize for his book Gitanjali in 1913. And Rabindranath Tagore could not tolerate the injustice done, and he returned the knighthood after the atrocities. Question number 3 is, freedom is our birthright and we must have it. So this is the famous slogan. It was given by, whether it was Gokhale, Bal Gangadhar Tilak, Jawaharlal Nehru, or Mahatma Gandhi. This slogan was given for the Swaraj, for the self-rule, and this was given by Bal Gangadhar Tilak. Question number 4 is, who among the following were the main leaders of Khilafat movement? Khilafat movement, we have seen that this took place during the non-cooperation movement, and they joined non-cooperation movement along with Mahatma Gandhi as to oppose British government for the atrocities which they have done to the Khalifa of Ottoman Empire, which is the present Turkey. So it was the main leaders of Khilafat movement were whether it was Syed Ahmad Khan and Aga Khan, Muhammad Ali and Shaukat Ali, Muhammad Iqbal and Salimullah Khan, Muhammad Ali Jinnah and Sikandar Hayat Khan. So the correct answer is Muhammad Ali and Shaukat Ali, who were the brothers who led the Khilafat movement. Then the next question is, the resolution of Quit India movement was passed in which of the following city? The options are Bombay, Calcutta, Madras, Lucknow. So at this time, Congress passed a resolution for launching a new movement, Quit India movement. And as the Cripps mission, as the earlier events to appease Indian leaders were failed, and this time Quit India movement was to be launched. So the resolution was passed in Bombay by Indian National Congress. Question number 6 is, Bhagat Singh and Batukeshwar Dutt threw a bomb in the Central Legislative Assembly on 8th April 1929 as a protest to which of the following bill or act? Options are Rowlatt Act, Public Safety Bill, Woods Bill, or Cripps Mission. So the correct answer is Public Safety Bill, under which the Indian people were not given any rights, and there were more policies framed by Britishers to exploit the rights of Indian citizens. Question number 7 is, when was Indian National Congress formed? The options are March 1932, December 1885, August 1919, March 1920. So the correct answer is December 1885. On 28th December 1885, such organization was formed so that it can represent Indian people, and also Indian leaders could place their problems and issues, petitions in front of Britishers for letting them know that they are exploiting the Indian people. So Indian National Congress was formed on December 1885. Question number 8. Why did Gandhiji call off the non-cooperation movement? Why he was forced to call off the non-cooperation movement? Options are on the account of the violence in Chauri Chaura. Next option is Cripps Mission. Next is Simon Go Back slogan, or Quit India Mission. So the correct answer is the violence which took place in Chauri Chaura hurt Gandhiji very much. This is a town, a place in Gorakhpur in UP, and there 22 policemen were set afire by the violent mob, which was not accepted by Gandhiji, as non-cooperation movement was a non-violent movement. Question number 9. Which of the following statement is not correct regarding Rowlatt Act? So these are the few statements given in Rowlatt Act, and which of the following is not correct we have to identify. Number 1 option is, this act was meant to give the government enormous power to repress political activities. Next option is, government could arrest anybody without a trial for 2 years under this act. Next option is, in response to Rowlatt Act, Gandhiji had called for a nationwide campaign in 1919. And the last option is, the tough measures of Rowlatt Act was chaired by Sir Stafford Cripps. So all the 3 options given 1, 2, and A, B, and C are correct, and these were the part of Rowlatt Act. And the last option, the tough measures of Rowlatt Act was chaired by Sir Stafford Cripps, is not correct, as Stafford Cripps mission was sent in 1942. And regarding the Rowlatt Act, this agitated the Sikh community, as they used to keep a kripan with them, which is a small weapon. And on the basis of that, Britishers now could arrest them without any reason, and without any trial, they could keep them in jail for 2 years. And this was opposed by a whole of the Indian citizens. And because of that, only Jallianwala Bagh massacre also took place. Question number 10 is, at which one of the following places did Mahatma Gandhi first start his satyagraha in India? As we know that Mahatma Gandhi lived in South Africa for 21 years, and there he carried out, evolved the new policy of satyagraha, new device of satyagraha, the fight for the truth. And in India also he carried out this technique. And so which was the first place where he did this satyagraha? Options are Ahmedabad, Bardoli, Champaran, or Kheda. So the correct answer is Champaran, which is a place in Bihar. And there the indigo peasants were very much exploited by the Britishers. They were forced to plant indigo and opium and such crops which was destroying their lands. And in spite of any epidemics or any calamities, they were not given any excuse in giving taxes. So for this, they came under the wings of Mahatma Gandhi and did their satyagraha. So with this, we come to the end of the topic. Thank you very much.